Good evening and welcome to Dark Historian. You're in a quiet place now, made for slow stories, soft thoughts and peaceful sleep. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let the day gently fade away. Tonight, we'll explore the quieter side of history, simple lives, strange old customs, and forgotten moments that shaped the world in quiet ways. If this calm journey brings you peace or helps you rest, feel free to like or subscribe, only if it feels. Right now, close your eyes, and let's begin. Story 1. Steam and Stone, the ancient Korean baths of Silla. Beneath the pine and stone, the air is still as you step into the wooded hills of ancient Silla. You hear no voices, only the whisper of wind over pine needles, and the low gurgle of water moving beneath stone. It is the 6th century, in the heart of the Korean peninsula, long before the three kingdoms became one. Bathhouses sit nestled among forests of cedar, pine, and ginkgo. They are not the grand tiled palaces of Roman legend, nor the perfume-laden chambers of later empires. These are humble place, part rock, part stream, part ritual, and their magic lies in the steam. You imagine yourself walking barefoot on a pine-needled path. The soft soil yields under each step, the faint scent of sap and charcoal curling up. In the air, a quiet figure, perhaps a monk or village elder, leads the way. No words are exchanged. They are not needed. Bathing in early Silla culture was not merely a practice of hygiene. It was a slow ritual folded into the beliefs of mountain spirits, the rhythms of farming life, and the ancient ideas of purity. You see it now, a natural pool, edged in mossy stone, fed by a steaming spring that emerges from a cleft in the mountain's side. These springs, yaksu, or medicinal waters, were said to cure ailments of the spirit and body alike. The minerals that bubbled from deep within the earth were considered blessings from the Sansin, the mountain guardian spirits, honored in hushed chants and small wooden altars. Some believe that those who soaked often in these sacred pools might sleep more deeply, dream more clearly, or even ease their melancholy. Inside the steam hut, which is little more than a circular room with a thatched roof, bundles of medicinal herbs hang from low rafters, mugwort pine needles, and dried kelp oil, carefully chosen to align the body's balance of hot and cold. A small fire burns in a stone hearth, fed not with timber, but with charcoal bricks, smokeless and slow-burning, perfect for long hours of quiet warmth. You kneel, as the ancient Silla bathers did, over a low basin. The water is warm, not hot. It is poured slowly over the shoulders, using a ladle made of gourd, polished from years of use. There is no scrubbing, no rushing, only time. Steam softens everything: muscles, breath, even memory. We have no detailed records of daily bathing schedules in this period, but what does remain? Scraps of poetry, court records, and Buddhist treatises tells us that baths were more than cleansing. They were offerings to the body, to the seasons, and to the ancestors. One poem, unearthed from a 9th century burial mound, describes the way steam curls upward like dragon's breath as morning dew fades from the grass. The bathhouse, in this vision, becomes a liminal place, a threshold between the human and the sacred. As you sit in this imaginary heat, you might wonder, what did it mean to be clean in a time before soap, before showers, before schedules? Perhaps, for the people of Silla, to be clean was to be in rhythm with rain, with soil, with silence, and as the wind brushes through the pine above, you're left with a quiet question. Was this how they prepared for sleep by first washing? The world away, asterisk, the way of warmth and wind you awaken in a quiet guest house, not far from the ancient capital of Gyeongju, where the roofs slope like gentle waves and the air smells faintly of cedar ash. The sun has barely risen, its light filters through the lattice windows in strips of pale gold. A servant passes by silently, carrying a basket of fresh charcoal wrapped in hemp cloth. Today is a bathing day, as it was for many in Silla aristocracy. You rise slowly, as others once did, wrapping yourself in layered robes, romy in summer, padded hemp in winter. Outside, a path winds through garden moss and falling leaves, down to the baths by the stream bed. This time, it is a Mukjik bath, kind of dry sauna heated by an underground fire, a predecessor to what would later evolve into Korea's hung. These round stone huts, dome-shaped and low to the ground, are heated by flames from beneath. Once the fire burns down, the ashes are swept away, and people crawl inside the warm chamber to sit or lie on the floor stones, which retain heat for hours. You can feel the heat rising up through the soles of your feet as you enter. Inside, the space is dim and round, with no sharp corners to disturb the peace. The ceiling is stained dark from years of smoke, but the walls are smooth and cool to the touch. Around you, other bathers breathe deeply, slowly, no one speaks. This is the domain of quiet healing, in Buddhist-influenced Silla. The body was seen not as shameful, but as a vessel for balance. To sweat, to cleanse, to sit in silence, these were forms of meditation, just as valid as prayer or scripture. And so the bathhouse was often built close to temples, or even inside temple grounds. Monks and lay people alike took part in these steam rituals, believing that a warm body helped still a wandering mind. You imagine a monk here, seated cross-legged in the corner. His robes are folded beside him, and a wooden bowl sits at his side, filled with cool mountain water to sip slowly between rounds of sweating. Perhaps he has brought with him a strip of silk to wipe his brow, or a pouch of powdered pine bark to freshen the skin afterward. The bathing herbs, pine needles, mugwort, sometimes even powdered ginger are meant not only to purify the body, but to balance its ki, the vital energy. There is a small chime at the door. Someone enters bearing a ceramic jug of barley tea, its scent slightly nutty and warm. A polite bow is exchanged, but no words. You sip the tea slowly, letting the contrast of warm stone and cool liquid lull your senses. The architecture of the bathhouse is deliberate. Low ceilings keep heat in, circular walls ensure that no one can hide or dominate the space. All are equal in the circle of sweat. Even kings, it is said, bathed this way. They had their own chambers. Their rituals were not far removed. From the common folks, Queen Sihanouk, the famous ruler of Silla, was rumored to have designed garden bathing pavilions where warm stones were laid out beneath open skies, surrounded by flowering trees. A union of natural beauty and bodily care. And though little survives of these spaces today, traces remain in the layout of temple courtyards, in the smoothness of stones along old paths, and in the stories whispered from one healer to the next. As the heat fades, bathers emerge slowly. Outside, bowls of cold water await, not for drinking, but for the feet. Soaking the feet in cold water after a steam bath was believed to seal the warmth inside the body and keep one's ki from escaping too quickly. A final act of stillness before returning to the world. You lower your feet into the bowl. The shock is gentle, not harsh. You feel the contrast: warmth within, coolness without. Breath slows, thoughts blur. And in that moment, you might wonder, how much of healing is found not in action, but in stillness? Asterisk echoes in the mountain mist dusk settle softly over the valley. The forest path, dappled with falling leaves, is damp from the evening dew. A gentle mist curls around the base of the hills like silk unraveling from a spool. This is the hour, when the bathhouses are quietest, when even the fire tends to flicker more slowly. You find yourself walking once more toward the baths. Not for cleansing this time, but for contemplation. A simple pavilion stands beside the stream open on all sides, roofed with wooden tiles. This was once used for night baths in the summer months, when the heat of the steam was matched by the cool murmur of water nearby. Thin curtains of gauze blow in the breeze, woven from plant fibers and dyed with indigo and soot. They barely concealed the interior, a single tub carved into the rock. Filled from the natural spring, elder healers, often women, would bathe here by moonlight. They brewed sleep tinctures from lotus root, cinnamon bark, and fermented barley water, not to induce dreams, but to soften the space between waking and rest. You can picture them carefully unwrapping small bundles leaves, tied with reed string, clay pots sealed with beeswax. Every herb had its hour: mugwort before midnight, ginseng before dawn. These women were often midwives, diviners, or herbalists. They were not officially recognized in court documents, but their work shaped the rhythm of village life. Their knowledge passed from hand to hand, wordlessly, like the bowls of warm rice water passed between bathers in some villages. It was said that steam itself could read the body. A healer might watch how the vapors clung to your skin, or where sweat first appeared. These signs would guide a diagnosis: imbalance of wind, stagnation of ki, or lingering sorrow in the heart. Treatment was gentle, perhaps a stone to hold. During bathing, a melody hummed through steam. A week of early dusk walks beneath pine trees. You pause to listen. Somewhere deep in the trees, a bell sounds a soft, low note from a distant temple. It reminds you that time here moves differently. Not by the hour, but by the change in scent, the cooling of stones, the angle of sun on water. A child's voice once whispered here. A lullaby passed from grandmother to granddaughter, meant to be sung after a bath, before sleep. The words are lost, but you imagine the melody slow, with long vowels, like steam curling from a bowl. In the winter months, the baths were often paired with ondol, the traditional Korean floor heating system. Flat stones were laid beneath floors and warmed by channels of smoke from a fire in another room. After bathing, one would lie on these warm floors, wrapped in thick cotton quilts. The warmth seeped upward, surrounding the body like an unseen blanket. Outside, snow fell on black tiled roofs. Inside, breath slowed. Even today, in the modern Jimgalbang, echoes of these ancient practices remain: warm rooms, shared silence, ritual cleansing, tea. The herbs may change, the structures may gleam, but the rhythm is the same: heat, quiet, restoration. As you leave the ancient bath for the final time, the path before you is dim, lit only by fireflies and the occasional flicker of oil lamps set. In stone niches, each step is soft. The moss gives way gently beneath your foot. The world smells of wet stone, cedar smoke, and old earth. And as the stars begin to show themselves, first one, then another, then 1,000 pinpricks of ancient light, you may wonder, in a world before electricity, before alarms and screens, and schedules, was it the steam that prepared the people of Silla for rest, or simply the silence. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. A world of silk-wrapped scrolls and rainy rooftops, where laundry itself became an art form of quiet devotion. Asterisk, the laundry scrolls of Edo. Cleanliness in 18th century Japan, asterisk morning. Threads and Riverstone Zit is a quiet morning in the eastern capital. The year is 1765, and Edo, the city that will one day become Tokyo, wakes, not with noise, but with rhythm. The soft clap of wood sandals on stone paths, the rustle of reed blinds being rolled up for sunlight, and by the riverbanks, the gentle slap of cloth against water-smoothed stones. You walk slowly down a narrow path lined with mossy garden walls. A breeze brings with it the earthy scent of damp linen and sakura bark. Laundry day in Edo was never just a chore, it was a kind of quiet ritual, a domestic ceremony observed by nearly every household with a grace passed down through generations. At the river's edge, you find a group of women kneeling at flat stone ledges that dip into the shallows. They wear cotton robes tied high at the waist, sleeves rolled to the elbow, exposing arms that are lean, practiced, deliberate. A wide wooden basin floats beside them, bobbing gently with the motion of the water. The first step, always, is soaking. The cloth, usually indigo-dyed kasori or plain sarashes, submerged slowly, not plunged. The goal is to coax the fibers, open, not startle them. Water is drawn up by wooden ladles and poured over the cloth again and again in sweeping arcs. You watch as the sunlight turns each splash into silver dot. There is no soap here, not in the way you might expect, Edo period. Washers used rice bran, finely ground and tied into muslin bags, rubbed gently into the cloth to lift oils and soften the weave. The scent is faintly sweet, like roasted grain. Occasionally, they might add ash from pine wood, or boiled water from the bark of certain trees, each washer with her own mixture, her own secrets, and always there is silence. In many districts of Edo, talking while laundering was considered impolite, not because it was forbidden, but because washing was seen as an act of intention, focused, nearly sacred. The rhythm of cloth and water became a quiet space for thought. One woman pauses to adjust a cloth in the sun. She is perhaps 50, with hair bound tightly in a style called marumage, marking her as married. She handles a linen jubanan under kimono with great care, brushing it smooth on a plank of paulownia wood. You can see that the stitching, though hidden when worn, is delicate and even. The thread has been dyed with persimmon tannin, giving it a soft reddish hue. Nearby, another woman unfolds. A long piece of white sriracha bleached cotton gauze used as a binding undergarments or a towel. She lays it flat on a bamboo frame, then carefully aligns it with the morning sun. Sunlight, you see, is not just for drying. It was believed to purify, to strengthen, even to whiten cloth over time. This was sarashi hoshi, the act of sun, and it required attention to wind, cloud, and angle. As the day warms, more laundry appears. Some from samurai homes, bundled carefully and marked with inked family crests. Others from tea houses, their linens carrying the faint trace of incense. And tea. There are even tiny garments, children's wraps, embroidered with plum blossoms and cranes. Each piece has a story, but here they are all simply clothed up. In some neighborhoods, illustrated scrolls, senmen, nozu, or laundry illustrations were used to teach proper folding, drying, and storage techniques. These scrolls were part instruction manual, part art. They depicted women hanging robes on high bamboo poles, or folding silk with precise creases to preserve its shape. Some were even passed down like heirlooms, their edges worn from generations of careful use. You walk among them now, though unseen, trailing your hand across a cord strung between two trees. A cotton sash flutters in the breeze. It smells of wind, water, and patience. You sit for a moment on a flat stone, listening not to voices, but to the language of cloth, the sigh as it lifts, the soft snap as it straightened, the drip, drip, drip into the soil below, and you begin to wonder, in a city of samurai and poets, of merchants and carpenters, how many moments of peace began here, with a simple basin and a length of wet linen. Asterisk, very good. Let the river keep flowing beside you, and return now to the drying cloth, the scent of sun-warmed cotton, and the quiet care of a life lived in folds and fibers. Asterisk, folding winds and fabric wisdom is late morning now in old Edo. The sun stands higher, casting short, crisp shadows across the packed earth yards and wooden porches. Laundry has begun to dry slowly, not in haste, but in harmony with the air. You walk past a courtyard where a woman, perhaps in her 30s, is carefully folding a set of negajuban, the plain under-kimono garments worn daily. The cloth, still slightly damp, releases a whisper of rice bran scent as she presses her palms to it. The folding is precise, sleeves tucked in, length halved, corners squared. She works not quickly, but with the kind of fluid memory that comes only from daily repetition. Folding, in this place and time, is not merely about storage. It is preservation of form, of fabric, of intent. A poorly folded kimono will crease at the collar or stretch at the hem, altering how it falls across the body. And so, mothers taught daughters, and neighbors quietly observed each other's technique. The word for cleanliness ikatsu scaries, with it a sense not only of physical hygiene, but moral balance. An orderly home, clean garments, and careful daily practices were reflections of inner peace. The laundry became a quiet mirror of one's life. You pass by a home with a bamboo trellis overhead. Beneath it, garments hang in pairs, one plain, one patterned. It's a subtle signal. In some districts, alternating garments on the line was thought to confuse wandering spirits, preventing them from attaching to a single wearer. The belief was not fearful, merely cautious, a kind of domestic superstition woven into routine. In wealthier neighborhoods, you might glimpse silks among the linens. These were not washed in river water, of course, but with painstaking care indoors. Silk required soft well water and soap made from camellia oil or soybean paste. The fabric was hand-patted between layers of rice paper to lift dirt, then hung in shaded rooms to dry slowly, never in the sun, which would cause fading. You pause near a merchant's house where a scroll hangs beside the entry. It is a seasonal laundry guide, inked with delicate brushwork. These were common among households that employed multiple attendants, especially in spring and autumn, when the transition of garments required careful tracking. The scroll lists which items must be washed, mended, stored, or aired. You see familiar names: Juban, Obi, Tabi. Even the tiny tenugui hand towels are noted with reverence. Nearby, two children play beside a basin. One splashes, laughing, while the other attempts to wring out her hand towel using her whole body weight. The older woman, perhaps their grandmother, does not scold. She simply lifts the cloth, smooths it out, and ties it into a tidy roll with practiced hands. From a distant roof, a length of cloth flutters like a banner. This is koshimaki, a hip wrap worn beneath layers, dyed in deep indigo and patterned with simple waves. Indigo, or AI, was prized not only for its beauty, but its insect-repelling properties. The dyeing process itself fermenting indigo leaves in vats for weeks was often performed alongside laundering in shared courtyards or dye shops. In this way, color and cleanliness coexisted. You take a moment now to sit beneath a plum tree. Its early blooms have begun to fall, scattering across the drying lines like bits of white paper. A nearby house has a courtyard well, and from it, a young woman draws water using a rope pulley. Her sleeves are tied back with tasuki cords, knotted in a traditional pattern to keep fabric out of the way. As she turns, you see her gaze pass over each item on the line, not just to check if it's dry, but to absorb its presence. The care of cloth is never mindless. Edo's laundry practices were also seasonal. In spring and autumn, mass airing events called kansakai were held. Garments that hadn't been worn in months' winter kimono, formal robes, ceremonial sashes were unfolded, aired under the sun, and carefully brushed or steamed. These events, sometimes involving entire communities, were social as well as spiritual warding, off mold, moths, and misfortune in one quiet gesture. A family next door is airing their futons on a long wooden beam. Thick cotton-stuffed bedding, pressed and patted, then flipped carefully to expose every side to the sun. You smell the faint trace of cedar and human warmth. As the bedding puffs in the sunlight, you begin to feel something soft settle inside. You, too. In this rhythm of water and fiber, you begin to wonder, is cleanliness only about removing soil, or is it about restoring something, forgotten quietness, attention, even grace? Wonderful. Stay just where you are. The sun has dipped slightly now, and the scent of dried linen carries on the afternoon wind. Let us return, one last time, to the quiet world of Edo's folding rooms and fabric whispers, asterisk threads of time, and the art of folding stillness. Afternoon leans toward twilight. In Edo, the golden hour does not blaze, it deepens gently, like ink soaking into washi paper. The sounds of laundry work soften as well, less the rhythm of wringing and rinsing, more the occasional creak of bamboo poles or the dull thud of a futon being folded for storage. In the small back courtyard of a merchant's house, a wooden chest stands open. Its compartments are layered with furoshiki wrapping cloth seats, one holding a carefully folded kimono or undergarment, a sash, or a household towel. The folds are angular, exact, softened only by years of use and the warmth of human hands. Young woman kneels before the chest. She uses a flat board, not much larger than her palm, to align the sleeves of a robe. She then places a cedar chip between the folds, not only for scent, but to deter insects. The kimono is then wrapped in thin mulberry paper and labeled with a hand-inked tag, the season, the intended wearer, the occasion. She works in near silence. The only sound is the crinkle of cloth and paper, and the rustling of wind in the hanging Norran curtains nearby. A pot of tea steams gently beside her roasted barley, most likely cooling now, but still fragrant. You might expect such a scene to feel mechanical, but it doesn't. It feels like memory being preserved in some homes. Seasonal garments were not only rotated, they were honored. A child's haifu vest, too small now to wear, is folded gently and placed with care in a drawer, alongside her growing wardrobe. A widow might preserve her late husband's sash knot out of grief, but to honor its touch and the life it accompanied. Fabric in Edo was not disposable. It held echoes. Even worn cloth was stitched and patched with burrow techniques, turning, imperfection into an art form. You walk through a narrow alley now, where water drains gently from the wash basins into moss-lined gutters. The stones are warm underfoot. A line of Tenuguithin multi-purpose towels flutters above. Their patterns are hand-dyed plum blossoms, waves, stylized kanji. Each one tells a quiet story. Many are gifts wrapped around offerings, worn in festivals, or used to shade the neck on hot days. But here, now, they simply hang. No fanfare, just cloth becoming dry. One home displays an old laundry scroll by the doorway. The scroll is tattered at the edges, but still legible. Diagrams showing how to fold a kimono for long-term storage, how to loop obi sashes to prevent creasing, how to resoften stiff linen with a combination of steam and gentle rolling. These scrolls were not mass-printed. Each was drawn by hand, copied by apprentices, passed from teacher to pupil, mother to daughter, often never leaving the household. They were domestic wisdom made visible. A sudden breeze moves through the alley, lifting the curtains and rustling the laundry lines. You pause, watching the garments sway like ships on a still sea. The light has gone golden now, and the walls of the houses glow softly. Somewhere nearby, someone hums a tuna, wordless melody used to pace her folding. It has no name, only rhythm, the kind that carries work gently into stillness. As night approaches, the laundry is brought in, not all at once, but piece by piece. The most senior woman gathers the bedding, fluffing each before folding, patting it as one might pat a child's back. The younger ones fold towels, check for lingering dampness. No one rushes. It is said that rushing invites wrinkles, both in cloth and in mood. A final step remains. In some households, a small incense pellet is lit in the chest where linens are stored. This practice, Keidi no Sentaku, or scented laundry, infuses garments with the faintest memory of sandalwood or clove. It's not about masking smell, but about adding intention. A folded robe that smells gently of cedar and warmth is easier to wear with presence. And so, as the incense curls in slow spirals, the garments rest for another season, ready to unfold again like stories. You take one last look around the courtyard, now lit by the amber flicker of oil lamps. The laundry lines are empty, the chests are closed, but the air still holds the scent of rice bran, cotton, and wind. And you begin to wonder, when we speak of cleanliness, are we speaking of the fabric, or the care that lives inside each fold? Very well, let us now leave the quiet courtyards of Edo behind and travel to a harsher land, sun-bleached and ancient. You'll feel the rhythm slow again, but this time to the pace of camels, footsteps on basalt, and the creak of weathered leather. Close your eyes, if you like. Imagine the heat shimmering on the horizon, and the long thread of a caravan stretched across the desert plain. Story 3. The salt roads of afar, a day in the Ethiopian. Caravans before the sun rises over Lake Asala. Good morning comes differently in the Danakil Depression. It is not a gentle stir of birdsong or rustling trees. Here, in one of the hottest places on earth, morning arrives with silence. A kind of stillness so complete, even the wind seems reluctant to stir. It is the hour before light, the hour when the salt caravans begin to move. You are not a traveler here. You are something. Quieter, a presence, a watcher beneath the stars. The ground beneath you is crusted white, a salt plain that stretches beyond the visible, shining faintly under a moon that seems too bright for night. This is Lake Asale, or Eritrea, as the Afar people sometimes call it. not a lake in the way. You imagine water, but a lake of crusted mineral, well flat, shimmering and ancient. Before dawn, the caravan prepares. There is no loud bustle, no shouts or commands. The men of the afar-sought guild move with a kind of practiced hush, conserving both breath and energy. They've done this for generations. Some of their tools, long iron chisels, wooden mallets, rope made from doom, pomhaff, passed from grandfather to grandson. Nothing here is new, but everything is cared for. A fire glows low, not for warmth, but to prepare bitter tea brewed thick with leaves, ginger, and ashthorn to help the body resist the desert's bite. The men sip slowly, crouched in wool shawls, eyes blinking against the growing grey light. You notice that each has wrapped his head in cotton or white scarf against sun, dust, and sweat. Nearby, the camels stir. They have not yet been loaded, but they know what is coming. Their eyes half close, their tails flick in unison. These animals walk up to 25 kilometers a day, carrying over 30 salt slabs each moles, as the bars are known. The camels kneel, slowly when summoned, folding their legs under with a kind of weary dignity. They've walked this route for years, maybe decades. You begin to notice the sounds of morning here. Not birds, but the rhythmic sound of the salt crust cracking under boot heels. Not leaves rustling, but the soft grunts of camels. A boy strikes a chisel against the salt bed with a single clean knock, testing for weakness. Then again, and again, soon, the work begins. Salt is not simply scooped or gathered. It is harvested with care. The men mark rectangles on the lake's surface with thin lines scored into the crust. Each slab about the size of a man's forearms, pried loose with slow, deliberate effort. Mallets tap, chisels slide, and the salt breaks free in geometric blocks that glint like dull glass. There is a grace to it, a rhythm. They call it bulo, the cutting dance. And still the sun does not yet rise. The sky shifts from deep blue to pale. Silver, a faint warmth begins to emanate from the horizon. This is the brief hour of comfort, when the air is still tolerable and the salt can be loaded without blistering fingers. The men work efficiently, forming neat stacks of slabs beside each kneeling camel. Every stack is counted 42 blocks, bound in rope, balanced on both flanks of the camel's back. You might wonder, why salt? Because salt is life here. For centuries, these amylase were used not just for trade, but as currency measured, like coins, carried like treasure. A man could buy a goat with 5 amylase, or a wife with 50. Even today, salt from this region finds its way to the highland markets of Tigray and Wallo, traded for coffee, cloth, or wheat. The salt roads are not just trade routes. They are veins through which culture, sustenance, and survival flow at last. The sun breaches the horizon. It arrives like a blade cutting sharply across the salt pan, turning everything golden and harsh. Shadows stretch long behind the caravan. Eyes squint beneath head wraps. Work ceases. The moment has passed. The men finish loading, secure the ropes, and tap the camel's knees gently. One by one, they rise, groaning and staggering, but obedient. The caravan begins to move. It does not move quickly. Each step is careful, deliberate. The salt crust is uneven, and a misstep can cause a camel to falter, dislodging its load. The lead walker carries a staff with a bone handle. He hums not for company, but for cadence. The others follow, their sandals stirring dust and salt shards, their shadows long before them. You, too, Follow not as a participant, but as a gentle breath moving alongside. The sun climbs, the salt plain stretches endlessly, and still they walk as the heat begins to rise. A question emerges not loudly, but like a trace of wind along the dunes. How many generations have walked this road? And how many more will trace the same white path beneath the same unchanging sky? Asterisk then, stay close and walk a little farther. The salt glows like fire beneath the midday sun, and the horizon trembles in waves of heat. But the caravan presses on, its rhythm unbroken, its silence profound. Let us follow now not just their footsteps, but the quiet economy of a life shaped by salt, sand, and the long patience of the desert. Asterisk, midday along the salt road, the sun, now fully risen, sits like a white coin in the sky and blinking, unshaded and absolute. Shadows vanish beneath the feet of the walkers, and the salt beneath you reflects the light upward, bathing the world in a strange, blinding pallor. This is not the bright warmth of spring or the golden heat of harvest. This is the raw furnace of the Danakil, yet still. The caravan moves. The line of camels undulates slowly across the salt pan, their padded feet landing in near silence, despite the weight of their cargo. Their loads shift slightly with each step. 42 salt slabs per camel, bound in tight bundles, swaying like slow pendulums. The camels do not complain, their groans are few, their patience endless. At the front, the lead walker adjusts the leather strap across his brow. The strap is attached to a short wooden stick, an old tool for guiding camels, not with force, but with suggestion. He doesn't tug or strike. He taps the air near the led camel's shoulder, or clicks his tongue in a rhythm only the animals seem to understand. It's a language of gestures, not words. By now, sweat beads along every exposed surface. The salt reflects it, amplifies it. The air shimmers, dry and buzzing. Lips crack. Sandals grow hot. Still, the walkers keep their pace, not because of urgency, but because stopping means facing the heat without shade every so often. One of them leans down to touch the salt underfoot, not out of reverence, but to check the crust. In certain areas, it thins dangerously, threatening to collapse into brine pools hidden just beneath the surface. If the crust breaks beneath a camel, recovery is difficult. Salt is heavy, so is silence. And yet, as harsh as it is, the salt road is not empty of comfort. A brief break comes around midday, not marked by any clock, but by the signs only the seasoned recognize. A thinning of the light's harshness, the brief whisper of wind, and the simple knowledge carried in muscle memory. The men find a slightly raised area where dark volcanic rock juts through the salt. They gather under a makeshift shade, squares of fabric tied to sticks or slung over camel saddles. It isn't much, but it softens the light. Water skins are past goatskin flasks that sloshed faintly with brackish but life-saving contents. Each man drinks sparingly, swishing before swallowing, offering the same to his companions. There is no waste here. Water is measured not in thirst, but in distance yet to travel. A cloth is unwrapped, revealing in gerasor spongy bread rolled tightly to preserve its moisture. Another bundle contains dried meat, chewed slowly, methodically. Even eating here is a quiet ritual, a moment of survival carried out with dignity, and conversation, if it happens at all, is spare. There are no stories, no complaints, only short remarks, the condition of the salt, the behavior of a camel, the changing shape of the sky. One man rubs a cracked heel with sesame oil. Another closes his eyes and leans against his saddlebag, not sleeping, but conserving his presence. Even the camels rest with their heads turned toward the sun, as if accepting its presence with resignation. As you observe, you realize something quietly profound. This journey is not heroic. It is not an adventure. It is simply what is done. A ritual of economy and endurance, unchanged by time. After the short rest, the loading resumes. A slab has cracked. Two of the men adjust the ropes, using palm fiber twine to retie the bundles. Another man checks his knife, the blade worn thin but still sharp enough to shape the salt if needed. These small moments of flick of rope, the press of thumb against camel hide, the measured tug of a strap form the rhythm of life on the salt road. By now, the salt plain has begun to change. What was once flat becomes rippled. In some places, the salt crystals form strange hexagonal tiles, like the surface of an ancient map. In others, volcanic rock pushes through, jagged and dark, reminders that this land is not lifeless, it is simply patient. You pass a solitary shriner, small cairn of stones arranged in a dome. On top lies a single chunk of salt, wrapped in cloth. This is not a religious shrine in the formal sense, but a marker, perhaps a memory, perhaps a promise. No one speaks as they pass. A few touch their fingers to their lips, then to the salt. This moment, too, passes in silence. The wind begins to pick up in the afternoon. Not a storm, just enough to lift a dry rattle from the crust. Salt particles skitter across the path. The camels grunt more often now, their pace slowing. The men loosen their head wraps slightly. Adjusting for airflow, the day's march is nearly done. But before they rest, there is one more ritual. A corlo and rhythmic echoes from the front of the line. It's not a song, but a kind of chant, repeated softly, H-E-Y-I ... H-E-Y-I ... H-E-Y-I ... Each walker takes it up, the sound drifting across the salt like smoke. It is not for the camels, it is for themselves. A way to pass the final hour. A sound of solidarity against the silence. And as the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows once more, the caravan begins to curve toward the black ridge that marks the edge of the plain. There, among the basalt outcrops, lies a camp. A simple ring of stones, an old fire pit, and a few faded cloths, marking a place where saltmen have slept for 100 years or more. The walkers do not speak of their exhaustion. They simply arrive, unload the camels, check each bundle, and sit. The fire will come later, the tea, too. But for now, there is only sitting, and as you settle near the edge of the circle, you might find yourself wondering, in a world so wide, so fast, what wisdom lies in the pace of a camel and the stillness of salt underfoot. Then let us linger a little longer among the salt and stars. The fire is lit, the wind is quiet, and as the night stretches across the Danakil like a worn shawl, we return slowly, calmly to the final chapter of this ancient journey. Night. Beneath the volcanoes, watch the desert night does not arrive suddenly. It creeps in, grain by grain, across the plain. Long after the final bundle of salt has been removed from the camel's back, the air cools by mere degrees. The ground is still warm, the salt crust still radiates the day's fire, but the wind now moves more freely. It whispers through the basalt boulders, rustles the loose palm fiber ropes, and catches on the folds of discarded shawls. Camp is not elaborate, just a circle of travelers, their animals tethered nearby. No tents, no woven mats, only stones arranged to break the wind, a fire built lone to cook, but to smoke the flies away and provide enough light for tea and small repairs. You sit just beyond the circle, wrapped in a borrowed shawl, and listen. There is quiet talking, now low and steady, like the coals. Stories drift between the men, sometimes half-sung, sometimes broken off mid-sentence. One is telling a tale about a camel who once wandered too far and came back carrying a lost man's scarf on its horn. Another speaks of his father, who walked this same road, barefoot, with only a dagger and a bag of dates. None of the stories are dramatic. They are not tales of conquest or war. They are about mistakes, small moments, strange dreams, and each is met with a nod, a hum, or the clink of enamel mugs. The tea, once bitter in the morning, now tastes sweet. Made with coarse sugar and a few crushed leaves, it is poured from high above into dented cups. The steam curls upward, vanishing into the desert sky. This, too, is a ritual, the evening pour. Some say the height of the pour shows respect to the guest. Others say it's simply to cool the tea. But no one debates. They just sipped above. The sky reveals itself slowly. First a few stars, then hundreds. Then an ocean, the Milky Way, drapes itself across the heavens like an old banner frayed and glorious. There is no artificial light here, no city glow, no buzzing wire. Only the stars and their reflections, mirrored faintly in the crystalline surface of the salt nearby. Far off, beyond the edge of camp, rises Mount Eltha, smoking mountain. You can't see its lava tonight, but the men tell you it is there, always watching. It has watched every caravan, every trade, every sleeping circle just like this. They speak of it not with fear, but with familiarity, as one might speak of an old neighbor who sometimes rumbles, but never truly disturbs. Around the camp, small tasks continue. One man tightens the straps of a woven saddlebag. Another applies oil to a camel's cracked lip. The work is quiet, unhurried. Even rest here carries motion. Nearby, a boy no older than 12 lies flat on his back, arms spread wide. He names stars, aloud not by Greek or Roman names, but by the names his grandfather taught him. Names of animals, ancestors, forgotten tools. Each name is a story, half remembered, half invented. No one corrects him. The camels doze in clusters, chewing the memory of food. They breathe deeply, their flanks rising and falling like boats on still water. Occasionally one bellows in sleep, a low rumble that fades into the dark. You might expect sleep to come quickly here, but it does not. It arrives gently, like everything else. One man leans back, arms crossed. Another covers his face with a scarf. A third, eyes half closed, continues to speak until he isn't. His voice blends into the rustle of wind and the crackle of the dying fire. And all around you, the salt sings, not with words, not even with sound, but with memory. The plain beneath you holds the footprints of countless caravans. It has borne the weight of generations. Every flake of salt, every shallow ridge, every glint beneath the stars is a mark of passage. You lie down. The shawl around your shoulders is coarse but warm. The basalt stone beneath your head, surprisingly smooth. Above, the constellations turn. And as your breath slows, as your thoughts dim, you wonder, will someone walk this road 1,000 years from now, under these same stars, with the same quiet purpose? Will they sit where you now sit, and sip tea brewed on ancient fire, and speak the names of salt as if it were gold? Very well. Let's step quietly now away from the salt plains, the starlit desert, and the creaking of caravans. We travel eastward, across seas and centuries, to the shaded courtyards and cedar-scented chambers of ancient Japan, where sleep was a ceremony and silence was considered a form of grace. Asterisk, Story 4. The Pillow Book of Sleep. Nightlife in Heian, Japan. Asterisk, evening in the Court of Stillness. Good evening, friend. You are now within the soft walls of a Kyoto estate, shaded by paper screens and curtained by nightfall. It is the 11th century. You are not a noble, but you have been invited perhaps as an attendant, perhaps as a scribe. Regardless, you are welcome, you are quiet, you are observant, and that is enough. It is early evening in the capital of Heian. The sun has just dropped behind the low hills to the west, and with it comes the blue hush that precedes darkness. In this world, the transition from light to night is slow, deliberate, and deeply aesthetic. Here, even dusk is curated. The lamps are lit not all at once, but in order. First in the corridors, then in the corners of the garden view rooms, and last, near the low sleeping platforms, oil lamps, placed in bronze holders shaped like lotus buds, flicker gently, their flames dimmed with long reeds rather than snuffed. Smoke is not hurried, away it is admired, as it curls and drifts like ghost script on invisible paper. You sit quietly as the court women change from their formal carriage-numo attire layered robes of state into softer cassoed and halfling jackets, more comfortable for night. Their silk rustles like water. No doors slam here. There are no hinges, only sliding screens, which whisper as they move. Every movement is meant to soothe. Someone brings UK, fragrant incense, blended from argar wood and clove, rolled into tiny balls and placed in a lidded dish. One by one, the balls are heated on mica plates over the coals of a hibachi. As the scent rises, you realize this is not for cleansing, not for meditation, it is for sleep. In Heian, Japan, scent is part of the body's rhythm. From somewhere nearby, a biwa short-necked lute plays 3 notes, then stops. The player is not performing, she is remembering. In this era, poetry is not composed at desks or in loud salons. It is scribbled on fans, whispered into sleeves, or murmured as one watches the moon rise. The moon is important. It is not yet full tonight, but close, waxing, white as powdered rice. Your room is simple. Tatami mats underfoot, woven from rice straw, give gently beneath your step. A wooden box holds writing brushes, folded letters, and a pouch of dried lotus seeds. Sleep is not yet upon you, but it is near. You can feel its shadow in the folds of the curtains, in the breath of the cooling floor. A lady of the court perhaps, a poet, perhaps a handmaid enters. The chamber briefly, she wears a robe of violet and ash grey, dyed with fermented plum. Skin, her sleeves are long, trailing slightly behind her. She does not speak. Instead, she leaves a folded piece of washi paper on the floor near the lamp. On it is a waka poem, brushed in delicate ink. In a hush of silk, the moon waits outside my sleeve. Will you read it there? No one answers. The poem is not a message, it is a trace. In this world, poetry is left like footprints. Later, just before midnight, another ceremony unfolds, not of grandeur, but of habit. Hair is brushed, slowly, thoroughly, 100 times in each direction. A servant dips a comb in camellia oil and draws it through long black strands. Hair is not simply styled, it is preserved. considered the soul's veil. Women sleep with it fanned across silk cushions. Untied, unseated, there is no bed frame, no headboard, just a sleeping platform, several layers of thick quilted cloth placed upon the tatami. Pillows are not soft. They are small, lacquered stands filled with buckwheat hulls or covered in painted paper. Some are carved from wood. These Makura pillows are not meant for comfort, but for form. Posture in sleep is as important as posture. In waking and before sleep, silence is not empty. It is alive. You can hear it now, the distant hum of the city's outer walls, the soft clicking of bamboo leaves against the veranda, the quiet drip of condensation from the eaves. These sounds are not distractions. They are notes in the composition of the night. A guard passes by in the outer corridor, his wooden clogs clapping against the walkway with measured regularity. 2 steps, then pause. 2 steps, then pause. His presence is not alarming. He is not watching for enemies. He is watching for time. And as you lie back, head resting on the sculpted pillow, you understand that sleep here is not an escape. It is an art. It is a careful folding inward of garments, thoughts, breath. The lamp is dimmed, the reed is removed, and in the darkness, perfumed with cedar and memory, you wonder what dreams once bloomed in the minds of poets who wrote only by moonlight and slept with their verses hidden beneath their sleeves. Asterisk wonderful. The evening has deepened, and the quiet is now complete. Let us slip deeper into this gentle world where shadows are delicate, and even dreams are penned with care. We return to the Heian Court not as outsiders, but as invited guests of the night. Asterisk sleeves of perfume and paper, dreams the hour of the ox between. 1 and 3 a.m. world stirred most privately, not with noise, not with movement, but with breath, with memory, with fragments of ink and scent and skin. Sleep here was a quiet landscape, but it was rarely solitary. There were customs, arrangements, visitations, and though the palace was wrapped in silence, the minds of its people often drifted wide awake. Rise slightly on your elbow, listening. From a distant wing of the estate, the soft click of getter sandals echoes against polished cypress wood. Someone is moving between chambers. A lover, a messenger, perhaps a poet caught in a wave of inspiration. Or perhaps it is nothing at all, just a dream of footsteps. The architecture encourages such mystery. Walls are made not of stone, but of paper, shejdi and fusima, sliding panels that allow light to pass, but hold sound like a secret. Rooms are divided by curtains, not locked doors. Privacy is not created through separation, but through etiquette. And so, sleep becomes layered. Not just horizontal, but social. Take, for example, the tradition of yobai, or night crawling. It is not what it sounds like to modern ears. In the Heian world, yobai was a romantic custom. Young men visiting the sleeping quarters of women under the cover of darkness to exchange poems, gaze at the moon, or rest beside them until dawn. These visits were often arranged, expected. They followed a refined dance of discretion. You imagine such a visit unfolding now. The man approaches in silence, cloak wrapped tight, his steps light across the veranda. He carries no torch, only a folded fan tucked into his sleeve, and perhaps a scrap of silk with a poem written earlier that day. The woman waits behind a lowered curtain. She may pretend to sleep, or she may have left her chamber slightly open, an invitation disguised as accident. No words are spoken aloud. The language is paper. He leaves a note beside her pillow. She answers in kind, before either retreating into stillness or allowing the curtain to lift. What follows is not rushed. In this culture, even desire is written in longhand. If he stays, he will leave before sunrise. If she is moved by the moment, she will keep the poem. You are not watching this happen. You only feel the quiet ripple of such customs around you. Embedded in the way the corridors curve and the lamps are trimmed low. In the very design of the house, intimacy is permitted but never shouted elsewhere. A servant woman tends the night lamp, careful not to disturb the coals. She adds a pinch of ash to soften the light. This too is a practiced skill, the dimming of flame without extinguishing it. It's said that a well-tended night lamp can stay lit for 8 hours with a single thread of cotton and a thimble of oil. Another quiet moment, an elderly courtier stirs from sleep and sits upright. He writes a line of poetry in the dark, not to preserve it, but to release it. He does not want to remember it in the morning. He simply cannot carry it back into sleep. The ink is faint, the brushstrokes broken, but the gesture soothes him, and he returns to rest with the ease of someone who has learned not to fear waking in the main garden. Moonlight falls across the sand, illuminating the raked patterns in silver relief. These shapes are not decorative. They are meditative pathways, designed to calm the eye before bed. Moon viewing was a legitimate pastime, here structured. Even parties were hosted, not for drinking, but for sitting beneath the night sky and watching the moon's reflection shimmer in a ceramic bowl of water-dot moonlight. Incense, handwritten verse, these were the tools of the Heian night, and so dreams became scented. It was not uncommon for nobles to perfume their sleeves so heavily that their beds would hold the fragrance for days. Entire treatises were written on the art of sleeve scenting, comparing blends of loosewood, clove, and sandalwood for their dream-inducing qualities. Some even believed the right scent could determine the tone of your dream, more influence whose image would appear in it. Your own sleeve smells faintly of plum bark and ambergris, borrowed from a tray in the guest quarters. It comforts you, even now. A night like this does not insist on sleep. It invites it, and so, as you lie back once more, head cradled against your wooden pillow, you wondered at those who wrote by moonlight and dreamed in verse, believe that sleep was a kind of poem, too written, not in ink, but in scent and silence. Welcome back. The night has grown still, like ink drying on folded parchment. And now, as the stars begin to pale in the eastern sky, we reach the final portion of this quiet journey through the nighttime world of Heian, Japan. Morning without. Waking it is the final hour before dawn, the hour when the boundary between dreaming and waking begins to soften. The air has cooled, the lamp has long since flickered out, and still the house does not stir. In the Heian world, awakening is not abrupt. It is not summoned by clocks or bells or barking orders. Instead, it emerges like mist-soft, gradual, almost imperceptible. You do not sit up, you merely listen. Outside your chamber, a distant ugisutha, Japanese bush warbler, has begun its early song. It is not loud. It sings once, waits, then sings again. Its voice is fragile, like breath pressed between two silk fans. This is the court's natural alarm. No one rushes to rise. The body is treated like a calligraphy brush, must first be moistened, gently angled, slowly moved. The act of waking is a continuation of dreaming. There is no real separation between the two. In your sleeping chamber, the faintest thread of light leaks in through a gap in the shaji panel. It is not the sun yet, only the beginning of it. You remain still beneath the soft folds of your bedding. Here, the quilted layers are not just warmth, they are architecture, folded in layers, like a poem with 3 stanzas, a shitone for padding, a yogi for the body, and a small roll to support the knees. Even the covers are composed with intention. Somewhere nearby, a noble woman wakes. She does not rise. Instead, she reaches for a letter she left unfinished the night before. It is a habit one learned from childhood. In the Heian era, a woman's worth was often measured in part by the elegance of her correspondence. She does not reread the letter. She only traces its folds with her fingers and lets it rest against her cheek for a moment before tucking it inside her sleeve. Others wake differently. A few low-ranking attendants begin their day with sweet bundled reeds, 2 gently clear fallen leaves from the stone pathways before their masters rise. The sound of sweeping, soft and steady, is among the first rhythms of Heian morning life. The scent of night lingers, not the incense itself. It has long faded, but its memory. The wooden box where it burned remains warm to the touch. You feel it as you pass by. It is said in court gossip that one can recognize a noble by their lingering scent long after they've left the room. Some even re-perfume their pillows after rising, so the next night's dream may return to familiar ground. But you do not rise yet. Instead, you observe. On a table near the inner veranda lies a bound book well handled, softened by use. Its pages are not printed, but brushed by hand. It is a Makura no Ski, a pillow book. These were not meant for publication, not in the modern sense. They were personal collections of thoughts, lists, observations, a kind of diary, but more elegant, more ephemeral. The most famous belongs to a woman named Seish Onagon, a lady in waiting known for her wit and her sharp eye for beauty. She once wrote, "Things that make the heart beat faster, sparrows feeding their young, to wash your hair, make it fragrant, and lie down to sleep, to notice that a person you love has eyes exactly like another you once loved, to pass by a garden and see a white chrysanthemum bent by the rain." You wonder what Seishonagon might have thought of this very morning, of the thin mist hovering over the koi pond, of the crescent-shaped scratch on the lacquered lampstand, of your breath, steady now, against the grain of the wooden floor. And you realize, in the Heian court, beauty was not always found in grandeur. It was gathered from moments, from oddities, from the quiet elegance of passing time. Sleep was never merely rest. It was where poetry was remembered, where scent became memory, where presence lingered in the fold of a sleeve. And as the first pale strand of sunlight finally stretches across the floorboards, you feel no urge to rise. The world is not yet awake, and so you stay a little longer, not in sleep, but in stillness, where all things are slow, soft, and gently unfinished. Story 5. Salt Roads and Sleep. The caravans of the Sahara * dunes. Camels and the geometry of quiet. Imagine this. You are surrounded by Sandan, ocean not of water, but of time. Grains shift softly beneath your feet. The wind moves like a whisper across low ridges, reshaping the land in slow, imperceptible curls. The air is warm, even after dark, and above you stretches a black sky pricked with stars, more stars than you've ever seen. You are in the heart of the Sahara, and you are not alone. A line of camels stretches to the east. each carrying a load of salt-glimming white slabs strapped into weathered saddles. This is no hurried expedition. It is a caravan, part of a trade network that moved salt, gold, and knowledge across the spine of Africa. The year is uncertain. It could be the 9th century, or the 13th, or the 17th. The desert has never marked time the way cities do. What matters is the rhythm, step, pause, chew, sleep, step. Again, each camel moves with the gentle sway of a boat, their padded feet leaving. Shallow impressions that will vanish with the morning wind. They grunt softly but do not complain. They have done this for generations. So have their drivers, Azawad men from the Tuareg tribes, wrapped in indigo veils, their eyes scanning the dark for familiar constellations. This is not the kind of history told through empires or battles. This is the history of movement, of long patience, of routes memorized, not on maps, but through rock formations and the shape of dunes. As you travel with them, you notice how quiet the Sahara becomes at night, not silent now. There is the wind, the creak of leather, the rustle of date palm matting as it's unrolled onto sand. But it is a soft, quiet, a respectful one. The desert allows no shouting. It wears down noise, just as it does stone. Camp is set in a low depression, between dunes, shielded from wind. The camels are gently hobbled with rope and allowed to chew cud in the dark. Their shadows stretch across the sand, oddly elegant. A small fire is kindled no brighter than a lantern. It is made from acacia, twigs, and camel dung, both dry and efficient. Around it, men lower themselves onto woven mats. There are no tents. Tonight, only blankets, shared heat, and the comfort of ritual. You sit quietly, watching. One of the elders draws a finger in the sand, sketching a pattern, a compass of sorts, but not of directions. Instead, it marks days until the next well, how many bricks of salt remain, which stars to follow when the moon grows thin. This knowledge is passed not in scrolls, but in gestures, in song, in small corrections murmured over steaming cups of Zurich fermented camel milk mixed with millet. After the meal, someone recites a poem. It is not long. It speaks of wind over stone, of longing for a well remembered from childhood, of a dream in which the camels walked themselves home without needing a guide. The men nod, some smile, no one claps. There is no need. The night deepens to sleep in. The desert is to surrender to vastness. You lie on your back, wrapped in rough wool, and feel the earth cooling beneath you. The stars seem closer here. You are not protected by walls or roofs or curtains, only the folds of your robe and the presence of your companions. Sleep comes, slowly. Perhaps it's the warmth still lingering from the day. Perhaps it's the memory of the poem. Perhaps it's the way the camels grunt softly in their dreams. But eventually, your breath slows to match the rhythm of the land, and as your eyes close, you wonder when the Tuareg traders closed their eyes beneath this same sky, what did they dream of? Not riches, surely. Not conquest. Perhaps they dreamt of oases of sweet water poured over calloused hands, of windless nights, of salt packed neatly on the back of a dromedary that never stumbles. Or perhaps they did not dream at all, only rested, knowing that tomorrow's journey would begin before. The sun, wonderful. Let the fire of the desert night smolder down into ash. The camels rest. The stars linger. And now, the salt roads stretch on not as burden, but as memory. Salt towns and the stillness of trade by morning. The desert is no longer a place of mystery, it is a place of purpose. There is movement, yes, but never haste. You rise before the sun breaks the horizon. The sand is cold beneath your feet. Camels are stirred gently, their harnesses checked, their knees rubbed with saltwater paste to soothe stiffness. Tea is poured, thick and green, from a tall, curved pot 3 times. The first is bitter, the second smooth, the third sweet. It is said that all 3 are necessary for a complete morning, and so that caravan continues. The destination is not a city in the conventional sense. It is a salt town, one of the great northern or southern points in the trans-Saharan trade network. Perhaps it is Tagaza, a settlement made almost entirely of salt blocks, or Walata, where Sahelian mud brick meets Islamic scholarship, or Timbuktu, where salt met scripture and scholars from across Africa debated theology beside traders, stacking bricks like gold. Today, we arrive at Tagaza town that even in its time felt improbable. There are no trees here, no gardens. The wind carries only the scent of dryness and the sharp sting of salt dust. But the structure's walls, floors, even the shelves are built from salt blocks harvested from the nearby mines. To live here is to surrender entirely to the economy of salt. You walk slowly through its crystalline corridors. The ground crunches underfoot. Everything glistens faintly under the sun, like a world made of bone and light. There are no markets in the usual sense. Trade here is silent, deliberate. Caravans unload their burdens. Bricks of salt, called amalay, are stacked in tidy piles. Each brick weighs roughly 30 kilograms. They are the currency of the desert, not just for seasoning food, but for preserving it, for treating wounds, for bartering grain, tools, even knowledge. A man crouches beside the pile, inspecting each slab with a practiced eye. He does not speak. He nods once, then marks it with a red dye. A deal has been made. This is not the marketplace of noise and shouting. It is a marketplace of quiet agreements. It is believed, perhaps rightly, that loud bargaining invites the spirits of misfortune. So here, the business of salt proceeds with the hush of ceremony. You are offered water cloudy, brackish, drawn from deep below the crust of this salt-wound land. It is warm, but welcome, a reminder that luxury is relative. Later, you sit beneath a canopy made of palm matting and watch as an elderly woman tends to a bowl of preserved dates. She is slicing them into thin ribbons, mixing them with ground millet and pressing them into tight cakes. These are travel rations, dense, enduring, nearly impervious to rot. They will be tied in cloth and carried for weeks. Food that needs no fire, no preparation, no fuss. She hums as she works. Nearby, a scribe kneels in the shade, a reed pen in hand. He dips it into dark ink and copies lines from a worn manuscript. This is the other cargo of the desert, words. The same camels that carried salt and gold also bore books carefully wrapped in leather and oiled cloth. Volumes on law, astronomy, healing, and the soul. These scrolls traveled from Cairo to Gao, from Fez to Jen, crossing dunes like whispers. The desert was not just trade, it was transmission. The scribe looks up, briefly, and smiles, then returns to his work. Evening falls again. This time, there are walls to sleep behind. Salt block houses with low ceilings and tightly sealed doors. The salt keeps the interiors cool, surprisingly so. Inside, you lie down on a mat layered with wool and palm fibers. The floor crackles slightly beneath your head. There is no lamp, only moonlight seeping through a crack in the wall. The smell is unfamiliar, mineral, dry, almost metallic but not unpleasant. You listen for sound and hear very little. The wind is calm. No camel calls tonight. This is the silence of rest, of a place that exists not because of nature's abundance, but because of human need and ingenuity. As you close your eyes, you find yourself wondering not about the trade routes, but about the people who chose to live here, who built homes from salt, who raised children in a place where trees could not grow, who fed their guests tea and handed them bundles of dried fruit with quiet pride, and what they dreamed of here in these salt-glimmering rooms. Asterisk, lovely. The salt block walls have cooled with the night, and the stillness of Tagaza lingers behind. Your eyelids, now, let us follow the caravan again, for riches, but for rhythm, not for conquest, but for continuity. The sleep of the caravan, the memory of roads by now. The caravan feels like home. The days move in slow procession. You wake before dawn, you pack, you walk. The sun rises like a molten coin, and the horizon remains, always, far. In the afternoon, there is little shade, only the long shadows of camels as they shift under their burdens, patient and unhurried. The Sahara changes not in sudden sweeps, but in the smallest of ways, a ripple in the dune, a darker patch of sand that hints at moisture beneath, a forgotten, well choked with dust, but still remembered, and always, the salt. You come to understand how much of West African history was shaped by this mineral that flakes on your fingers, crusts on your lips, and glitters in your dreams. In Timbuktu, salt was stored like treasure in cool storerooms and exchanged for books and ink. In Gao, salt met gold. In careful rituals, gold dust, measured with goose quills, salt slabs inspected, like parchment. In Kano and Kumbi Salad, salt meant survival. Meat could be dried, milk preserved, wounds treated, but the salt never moved itself. It was people, men, and camels, walking for weeks through heat and stillness that gave it meaning, and they did so with astonishing calm. There are no horns, no wheels, no beasts but those bred to walk in silence. The camel is the perfect traveler. Of these lands, its gait is hypnotic, its temper patient. It chews slowly, blinks thoughtfully, and kneels without drama at night. The camp is a hive of quiet preparation. A small tent might be pitched for the leader, made of goat hair and held down with stones. Water skins are checked. Grain is doled out, one handful per camel. A prayer is spoken. The men recite lines from memory, not from fear, but from habit. Not loudly, but like breath. And then, sleep. Desert sleep is deep, but not heavy. It comes from miles walked, not clocks obeyed. It is a sleep in rhythm with the moon, with the cycles of cool and heat. You sleep beside men whose names you've not asked, because names are not always needed when the body is tired and the stars are kind dot. In that in-between state, neither quite asleep nor awake, you remember small details. The taste of sweetened tea at a crossroads well, the call of a hawk as it shadowed the caravan for 2 days, the way the camels kneel at dusk without instruction, like old monks who know when to pray. You also remember the stories, told in fragments, when walking or while sitting with ones, back against a mound of sand. Stories of jinn who live in dried wells, of hidden cities swallowed by the dunes, of caravans that never returned, but whose bells are still heard in the wind. These are not fearful tales, they are lullabies made from absence. ways of explaining the hush that always comes with distance. And perhaps that is the true gift of these salt roads. Not only their commerce, not only their cultural exchange, but their slowness, their demand for patience, their invitation to humility in a world that often moved too fast. The desert required you to move differently. Step, rest, sip, listen, and sleep. Tonight, the final fire has burned low. The camels shift once, then grow still. The stars tilt overhead in slow ceremony, and you somewhere in that long line of forgotten travelers, close your eyes on the salt road. Your body held by the sand, your breath joined to the silence. Somewhere between trade and rest, between story and sleep. Wonderful. The caravan fades behind us, the salt-laden silence dissolving like morning mist. Now we turn our gaze eastward to gardens of steam, stone, and solitude, where the forest breathes through the walls of a BATHHOUSE RCOUSE.*6. The forest breathes. Korean baths of the Silla Kingdom * steam among the pines. Good evening again. Friend. Let us slip softly into the mists of an older Korea, one that existed not as a nation, but as a kingdom shaped by mountain wind and riverstone. The Silla Kingdom, born in the 1st century BCE, flourished for nearly a millennium. It was a land of elegant geometry, rooftops curved like flower petals, poems inscribed on the backs of folding fans, and hillsides planted with secrets. Here, among the ancient pines of Gyeongju, the capital, you will find something unexpected. A bathhouse hidden in the woods. Not a grand spa, not a palace of marble, but a simple structure, stone at its base, clay brick above. Its sloped roof nestled under branches. This bathhouse has no sign, only steam, rising in gentle threads, gives it away. You walk closer, and the smell greets you: mineral-rich water, sweet pine smoke, and something else. Perhaps mugwort, slowly steeping in a wooden bowl. Inside, the light is soft, not from lamps, but from the wide slats in the roof that let daylight filter through like mist between trees. The air is warm, never stifling, just enough to loosen your breath, to soften the stiffness in your shoulders. You are not alone here, but the other bathers do not speak. A young woman sits cross-legged near the wall, her eyes closed. Beside her, a grandmother gently pours water over her own arms from a blackened gourd. Even the children move quietly, trailing fingers through the heated pools. There are 3 rooms each, warmer than the last. The first is the cool room, a place to sit, to remove one's shoes, to prepare. Here, women light small cones of dried herbs to purify the air. The scent is faintly spicy, with notes of fern and earth. The second room is warm, not yet hot. This is where bodies adjust. Water from a nearby spring is heated in large stone vessels over low fires. A pair of bathers stir it gently with long bamboo poles, ensuring the warmth spreads evenly. You're offered a towel woven from hemp fiber, softened over many seasons. It smells of rice, starch, and wind. You sit on a wooden bench, and time slows. The third room is the hottest, and narrow chamber lined with dark stones. The heat here doesn't press against you. It envelops you like moss wrapping a stone. The floor is lined with polished tiles, and water drips steadily from a bronze pipe high on the wall. And somewhere above, hidden in the rafters, birds nest. You can hear them, their tiny wings rustling against the old wood, a gentle counterpoint to the drip, drip, drip of warm water into the pool. This is not only a place for cleansing, it is a place for healing and for listening. In the Silla tradition, baths were meditative, influenced by both Buddhist monastic customs and native mountain worship. The forest itself was thought to be a leave its breath mingling with the steam. To balance the spirit, you run your fingers over the stones lining the edge of the pool. Some are etched small characters, perhaps a poem left by a monk long ago, or a herbal recipe remembered by a healer. These stones have been handled by many, their surfaces worn smooth by years of gentle, wet hands. An elderly man ladles water into a wooden cup and offers it to you. You sip. It is warm, slightly metallic, but soothing. He nods. No words pass between you. This is not the kind of place where stories are told aloud. Here, stories are inhaled, absorbed, folded into the rhythm of hot water, quiet breath, and pine scent. And so, you lean back against the stone. The heat wraps around your ribs. Your heartbeat slows. The sound of your own breath becomes like the forest, quiet, pulsing, distant, and just before sleep takes you. You wonder how many generations came here to rest in silence. How many dreams drifted like steam into the canopy. Very gently, the steam curls upward, carrying with it the sighs of centuries. The bathhouse does not ask questions, simply holds you. Now, let us step quietly into the forest itself, where the trees and waters worked together to make stillness sacred. Mountain spirits and mugwort smoke the bathhouse. As warm and inviting as it is only part of the experience. In the time of the Silla kingdom, a bath was not separate from the land, it was part of it. Healing came not just from hot water, but from the living forest. So you follow the path outside. It is narrow and soft with fallen needles. The forest here is made of pine, fir, and old ginkgo trees that know how to stand still. Their trunks rise like the columns of a silent temple. Here and there, small stone altars appear, some covered in moss, others with fresh offerings, a few grains of rice, a piece of tangerine, a small twist of paper inscribed with someone's wish. These are not grand shrines. They are humble places where mountain spirits, called Sansin, are honored. The Sansin are not gods, exactly. They are older than names, older than scripture. They are the soul of the mountain itself. In Silla times, travelers and bathers alike would offer thanks to the Sansin before drawing water or gathering herbs. It was not fear, it was courtesy taught. Today, a woman kneels before a weather-worn altar. She is dressed in linen dyed with persimmon, her long sleeves folded neatly. She places a few strands of dried mugwort on a small flat stone and lights them with a twig of pine resin. The smoke rises in slow spirals. She watches it for a long while, then closes her eyes and whispers something, a prayer, or perhaps a memory. You do not disturb her. Instead, you follow the path deeper into the forest. You come to a clearing where a spring bubbles up from the rock. The water is cold and smells faintly of iron. Beside it grows angelica, mugwort, and peony herbs, prized not just for their medicinal use, but for their spiritual balance. Local bathkeepers, often elderly women with hands like bark, would gather these plants at dawn, when the dew still kissed their leaves. These women were called Yaknio, medicine women. They did not wear titles, but people traveled for days to soak in the baths they prepared. Their work was slow, thoughtful. The herbs would be bundled and hung to dry in the bathhouse rafters. Some were soaked in hot water for hours, releasing oils into the steam. Others were burned in low bowls, allowing their essence to mix with breath. Mugwort, especially, was revered. It was known as secand, was used for calming nerves, easing sleep, and settling restless spirits. Even now, in this forest, you can smell itathi, sharp, comforting. You sit by the spring. The Yaknio did not rush. She would taste the water before using it, placing a single drop on her tongue and closing her eyes. She would test the temperature of the bath with her wrist, not a thermometer. She would watch the trees for signs, the movement of leaves, the behavior of birds, not superstition, attention, and this too was a kind of bathing, not just of the body, but of the self. You lean back on your elbows. The sky above the trees is pale with afternoon. A squirrel chases something invisible through the branches. A breeze moves through, and the sound it makes is not a voice, but a hush. You understand now that the bathhouse was never truly indoors. The bath extended hereinto, root and moss, into incense and intention. And perhaps that is why Scylla's healing practices endured for so long, because they asked nothing more than awareness. The act of bathing was not to scrub away, but to return to breath, to quiet, to the rhythm of a forest older than kings. You take one last sip from the spring. It tastes of stone and time. Then rise slowly, your steps softened by pine needles, your thoughts wrapped in steam. And as you make your way back to the warmth of the bathhouse, you wonder who else walked these same steps in search of silence. How many names the forest keeps, without needing to speak them. Asterisk, welcome back, gentle traveler. The steam lingers on your skin like a remembered lullaby. The forest has shown you its breath. Now we turn to what lies beneath rituals of rest, ancient healing, and the slow rhythm of the sleeping body. Stillness, ritual, and the sleeping body. It is evening now. The bathhouse glows, not with fire, but with warmth that seems to rise from the floor itself. The last bathers have taken their leave, wrapped in linen, trailing soft footprints in the sanded stone. You remain, seated on a wooden mat by the warmest pool. The steam curls upward and disappears into the open rafters. Somewhere above, a nightbird calls once. Then all is still. This is when the ritual begins, not one of ceremony or spectacle, but one of restoration. In the later centuries of Scylla's reign, as Buddhism spread gently through the peninsula, ritual bathing evolved into something deeper. It was no longer merely a hygienic act or forest rite. It became tied to preparation for meditation, for sleep, and for memory. Monks would cleanse themselves in silence before long nights of chanting or study. Elder women would bring their daughters to the forest baths on the eve of a wedding or festival. Soldiers returning from service might soak quietly before rejoining village life. And always, it ended the same way. In stillness, you lie down on a flat wooden board, polished smooth with decades of use. Beneath it, stones heated earlier in the day radiate their warmth, upward, never hot. Only enough to ease the muscles into surrender. Beside you sits a bowl of water, now lukewarm, and a cloth soaked with a tea of lotus root and barley husk. Cloth is gently pressed across the forehead, then laid over closed eyes. It smells faintly of rain and rice. A woman hums softly an old tune, perhaps Scylla in origin, or perhaps older. It has no words. It need not. The healer, an elder with silver-threaded hair and hands thick from kneading herbs, moves slowly. She applies oil to the soles of your feet. Not perfume, but perilla oil, pressed fresh from tiny seeds. Its scent is grassy, almost nutty. She presses gently, in circular motion, to open the gates of rest. As her grandmother once taught her, no clock ticks, only the crackle of a charcoal ember in a clay stove. only the breath of the forest moving once more through the open slats. Of the roof tier, sleep is not an interruption, it is the goal. The Silla people believed that healing occurred best when the mind surrendered. Sleep was not wasted time, it was sacred. Inscriptions found on old bathhouse stones speak to this. Steam opens the gate, sleep walks through. Some even believed that certain dreams were sent by Sanson mountain spirits to remind sleepers of things forgotten in waking life. Not prophetic dreams, just quiet ones. A field from childhood, a voice long gone, a question answered not, in words but in warmth. And so, sleep comes gently. Your limbs grow heavy not from exhaustion, but from release. Your breath slows not because you command it, but because the body remembers how outside, the wind hushes through pine needles. Inside, the last candle flickers once, then dies, and you, stretched beneath a roof of steam and stars, drift softly, between one world and the next. Not all sleep is made in beds. Some is grown in forests, soaked in stone, and wrapped in mugwort. Some is handed down through hands that remember. Some, like this warm, weightless, and slow as the sleep of the Silla baths. And perhaps tonight, as your body lets go and your breath grows quiet, the forest itself sleeps beside you, not watching, not waiting, just breathing. Asterisk then softly, the scent of mugwort fades, and the stones grow cool beneath memory. Our path now winds, far from the forested hills of Sillatu, a place of ink, papyrus, and sand. It is time to meet a people who measured time by the rhythm of the Nile and found peace not only in grand monuments, but in the soothing, ordinary task of doing laundry. Story 7. Washing by the Nile. Laundry life in ancient Egypt, very gently now. Let us unfold the linen of memory. The sun is low over the river, golden and unhurried. The breeze carries a scent not of perfume, but of wet cloth drying in the sun. Welcome to the banks of the Nile, where laundry was more than a chore, it was a way of life. Asterisk, water, linen, and quiet labor. You are standing at the edge of the Nile. The water moves slowly, almost lazily, in the warm morning light. There is no rush here, only rhythm, gentle splashes, quiet voices, the flutter of linen in the breeze. It is not the Egypt of temples or pharaohs today, but the Egypt of soft daily tasks. The washerfolk have already begun their work. You see them from afar bent over the water, sleeves rolled up, skirts knotted high above their knees. Some stand on smooth stones at the river's edge. Others kneel in the shallows, dipping long strips of linen into the current. They hum as they work, not songs with words, but tunes passed down through generations of washing. The linens they clean are not luxurious. They are simple cloths, spun from flax, bleached in the sun and worn by farmers, scribes, and servants. Flax was the fabric of the people and of the gods. It grew in long golden stalks in the fields of the delta, harvested by hand, combed, soaked, spun, and woven into the soft white fabric that wrapped the living and the dead. You notice how methodical the work is. The washerman takes a length of linen, now wet and heavy, and lays it over a flat stone. With a short paddle carved from wood, a fan, smoothed by years of use, he strikes the cloth, once, twice, again. Not hard, just enough to drive out the dirt. Then he rinses, wrings it out, and lays it carefully on the riverbank to dry in the sun. There are no harsh chemicals, no machines, just hands, water, and time. Even the ancient word for laundry, sorgement, not just to clean, but to purify. The act of washing was spiritual, especially when preparing garments for offerings or burial. The Egyptians believed deeply in cleanliness. It was not vanity, it was balance. Priests bathed multiple times a day. Temple linen was laundered in silence. Workers at Deir el-Medina, the village of tomb artisans, were allotted water not just for drinking, but for keeping their garments clean. To appear dirty before the gods or, even before your neighbors, was to invite disorder. You watch as a young girl hangs a garment over a low branch. She takes a small clay jar from her satchel and dips her fingers into it. A soft paste and natron, she pats it along a stain, then rinses again. The natron comes from the dry lake beds near Wadi Natron, where salt and soda gather naturally in powdery banks. It was the same mixture used in mummification, but here it is just laundry soap, and it smells faintly of desert wind. You sit down nearby. A boy brings over a reed basket filled with damp cloth, ready for folding. He doesn't speak only, offers you a cloth to help. It is warm from the sun. You fold it slowly, carefully, following the crease already worn into its fibers. It is strangely soothing, this task. Folding linen in the sun, beside the slow pulse of the river. Even the breeze seems to hum. You imagine what it might have felt. Like to do this every day, not as a servant, but as someone tending to their family, their gods, their world. This quiet act, cleaning something worn, preserving something useful, was never just maintenance. It was meaning, and here, beneath a sky the color of pearl, you realize that laundry has always been more than labor. It is rhythm, it is offering. It is the slow return to stillness. Asterisk, then let the linen breathe in the warm breeze, and let your mind drift with the hush of the river. The morning labors soften into midday quiet, and now we linger with the tools and textures of a world that understood the art of washing as deeply as the act itself. Asterisk, songs. And the washerman's tools, the sun is higher now. Its warmth lays gently across your shoulders as you sit beside the river. The washerfolk continue their work, no urgency, no command, just the flowing rhythm of task and rest, rinse and fold. A woman nearby opens a clay jar and withdraws a clump of soft, crushed green. She kneads it between her palms until it foams slightly. This is soapwort, a plant called jarret in the old tongue. Its roots release a gentle cleansing foam when bruised. In water, used sparingly, it is soft on linen and skin alike. It was one of the many plants the Egyptians turned to not for scent or status, but for subtle efficacy. You see now that the art of ancient laundering had no single method. Different people used different tools based on need, tradition, and region. Near a rocky bend in the river, a man uses a flat scrubbing board made of worn limestone to gently scour the fabric. Another uses a reed whisk, brushing sand away from coarser tunics that belonged to field workers. The whisks are bound tightly with palm, vegetable but not harsh. And then there are the paddles, wooden, hand-carved, often passed down. Some are engraved with simple marks, a wave, a circle, a branch. Not decoration, but identification. When many families gathered at the river together, these little carvings ensured that no cloth or tool went home with the wrong hands. You look down at one of the paddles now, its handle worn smooth with decades of use. It's notched slightly, crooked, but it fits perfectly in the hand. You run your fingers along its grain and wonder, how many garments has it struck? How many mornings has it heard the same songs? For yes, there are songs, not chants or formal hymns. These are washerfolk melodies. Snatches of tune passed mother to daughter, sung without performance. The lyrics are simple. One tells the story of a stubborn stain that finally gave in. Another counts folds 1, 2, 3 to help little ones learn. There is even a song meant only for folding linen for the dead. Its words are secret, but the hum of it carries a deep, steady peace. These songs, you begin to understand, are not to fill silence. They are part of the silence. Even in the great cities like Thebes and Memphis, where large estates required full-time washermen in a June, the tools remained humble. In fact, tomb paintings from the New Kingdom show these washermen bent over vats, stirring linen with wooden poles, their faces calm, their postures unhurried. Cleanliness in Egypt was not performative. It was foundational. Workers were expected to launder their own garments between shifts. Priests shaved their bodies and bathed multiple times daily before entering temple sanctuaries. Even the humble Shabdi figurines buried with the dead's servants meant to work in the afterlife, often shown holding laundry tools. You pause across the water. A woman stands up and stretches her back. Her arms glisten in the light, damp with river spray. She laughs at something a child says. Then, carefully, she lays a long strip of linen on the sand. It is pale white, translucent in places, but perfectly clean. And you notice so gently you almost miss it that she folds it with both hands pressed flat, smoothing not just the cloth, but the moment itself. Perhaps this is why the washerman's job, though modest, was respected, because in a world of sand and sun, of pharaohs and festivals, someone had to make the fabric ready again. Someone had to cleanse the dust and lift the weariness. Someone had to fold the day with care, the paddle, the sword. They are not just tools. They are reminders that what we touch, we tend to, and what we tend to, quietly, becomes. Sacred asterisk, then let us fold one more corner of time, soft as linen and light as river wind. The day draws to a close along the Nile, but before sleep settles in, we visit a quieter kind of washing one that served temples, offerings, and the very boundary between the sacred and the serene. Asterisk temple linens, sacred suds, and the scent of stillness even draws a long breath over the river. The washerfolk begin to pack their tools paddles tucked into baskets. Folded linen placed carefully under shaded awnings to avoid the last burn of the sun. The day's work is nearly done, but not all laundering was done by riverbanks. Some quiet, precise, and devotional was done behind stone walls, in temple courtyards, and sacred storerooms. You now find yourself in one such place. The air here is cooler still. The stone underfoot is smooth with centuries of care. In the shadows of towering pylons and painted columns, the temple washer works alone. Not a servant, not a common laborer, but a trained and purified practitioner. He is a wabi, a pure one. His task is to prepare the temple linens, the white cloths used to wrap sacred statues, line offering tables, and bind scrolls. These linens are not merely clean, they must be ritually pure, free of unseen defilement. He washes them by hand, but not in the Nile. He uses consecrated water gathered from a basin within the temple complex, sometimes perfumed faintly with lotus essence or juniper root. The linen is first inspected for blemishes. Any tear or loose thread renders it unsuitable. Then it is submerged, pressed, lifted again and again. In rhythmic silence, the process is unhurried. One basin for washing, another for rinsing, a third for blessing. He uses not paddles here, but soft bundles of twisted linen clean cloths to clean cloths. Even the soap is different, made from burned barley ash and linden oil, stored in tiny alabaster jars. It leaves no scent, no residue, just the faintest touch of coolness when it meets skin. Outside, the world turns, asterisk, but in this chamber, time itself feels folded. You could remain here for hours, watching the washer at his task, and nothing would change. The same movements, the same breath, the same devotion. At the edge of the room sits a woven mat. On it rest small votive bowls containing salt, natron, and myrrh. These are not for the garments, but for the man himself. He must bathe before the washing begins, and again when it ends. Cleanliness is not just external, it is spiritual symmetry. You watch as he lays the freshly washed linen across a long slab of white alabaster. He smooths it once with his palms, then folds it with exacting care 7 times, each fold symbolic for sky, earth, wind, river, sun, breath, and heart. When the folding is done, he bows his head not in exhaustion, but in acknowledgement. He has not simply washed cloth. He has prepared it to hold presence. And now, in this moment of stillness, you notice the scent, not strong, almost nothing at all, but it lingers something between stone and morning air, a memory of ritual without words. You breathe it in, and for a moment, feel yourself part of the cycle, one that began with flax fields swaying in the delta wind, flowed through hands and songs at the river, and now rests in silence, awaiting the sacred. This too was part of daily life, not the grand processions, not the golden masks, but the folding of cloth, the washing of white, the quiet faith that care itself is holy. And in the hush of this room, with the last of the linen set aside, you feel it clearly. The sacred was never only in the temples, it was in the paddle, the palm-frond basket, the gentle slap of fabric in water, the way a washerman folded a tunic for someone who'd worn it many times and would wear it again tomorrow. And perhaps, if you listen closely as you drift towards sleep, you might still hear it, the rustle of linen, the echo of hands in water, the steady breath of the Nile, folding the day into stillness. Asterisk, very softly now, the Nile fades behind us like a memory of water on warm skin. A new rhythm begins to stirfant, wooden and echoing across jungle air. Our journey drifts east, to a land of quiet trees, hot springs, and ancestral rituals carried in steam. Let us step gently into Story 8, the forest that steams, bathing traditions of the JJIMJILBANG's ancient ancestors asterisk. The smokehouses of Silitha trees are old here, so old in fact that they barely move when the wind passes through. Their silence is not empty but full of stories, of memory, of long-lost routines wrapped in the quiet pulse of earth and breath. You are standing in what was once the kingdom of Silla, more than 1,000 years ago present-day Korea, but distant in rhythm and ritual. It is early morning in a mountain village. Smoke curls gently from the chimney of a small wooden hut round, in shape, low to the ground, built partly into a hillside. You approach slowly. The scent in the air is not of fire, but of pine needles, herbs, and the deep, damp perfume of warm stone. This is not a home. It is a forest bathhouse, one of the earliest forms of communal bathing in the Korean peninsula, predating today's jjimjilbangs by centuries. Inside there is no tile, no taps, only packed clay walls, thick logs, and a hollowed fire pit that has already been burning for hours. Women in light robes tend the coals, feeding them slowly with oak branches and bamboo, careful not to let the flames rise too high. A basin of water stands in the corner, steeping with mugwort, ginger root, and ujipila soothing mixture to be poured over stones once the heat begins to settle. There is a rhythm to this process. The steam hut is heated slowly over the course of an entire morning. It is not merely about bathing it is about warming the bones, softening the breath, and returning the body to quietness. By midday, the coals are removed and the hut is sealed shut, retaining the heat in its thick earthen belly. Only then do the villagers enter, and you do too. You are offered a thin cotton robe, dried beside the hearth and smelling faintly of roasted barley and wood smoke. Inside, the air is dense and hot, but not stifling. It envelops you like an old quilt, drawing sweat from your skin without urgency. No. One speaks loudly here. There is a reverent hush to the steam. An elder dips a gourd into the herbal basin and splashes the mixture gently over the central stone. Mound, the mugwort steam rises in thick spirals. It clings to your eyelashes. Your fingers begin to tingle as your pores open to the heat. Others in the room lean back against the wall, their feet bare, their faces flushed with calm dot. This, you begin to understand, is not just for the body. It is for the memory of the body. In the Three Kingdoms period, these smoke baths were known by many names. Saikdang, Anchon, and later Hanjungmak. Royal records from the 15th century would document their use in court as health treatments. But long before kings and scholars took notice, the baths belonged to the people, to farmers, monks, and women who had just given birth, especially the women. The postpartum bath, called samchile, was a deeply held tradition. After childbirth, women would rest in these heated huts for up to 3 weeks, sweating, wrapped in linen, drinking hot broth. It was not indulgence, it was repair. Even now, in some Korean villages, the practice continues, and so you sit. Legs crossed on the warm stone floor, someone passes you a bundle of leaves perilla, crisp and aromatic. You are meant to rub it gently on your limbs, not to scrub, but to encourage circulation. Others use salted cloths soaked in barley tea. The scents swirl roasted grain, fresh pine, sweet roots. It is not perfumed, it is grounding your breath. Slows. You imagine those who sat here centuries before you, their bodies different, but their fatigue the same. You picture a rice farmer resting after the harvest, a mother cradling an infant just outside, an old monk, silent, letting the heat draw stillness from his knees. And now you, sitting, sweating, inhaling the long, quiet memory of trees and smoke. And time, what, you wonder, does the body remember when the world goes quiet? What, if anything, does the heat help you forget? You do not need to answer. You simply breathe, and the steam continues to rise. Asterisk then, let us remain here a while longer. Within the hush of steam and the long breath of pine wood, the morning has passed, but the heat lingers still, sinking deeper into the earth, and deeper still into the quiet places of memory. Asterisk from village hearth to palace court, the door creaks open again. A breeze stirs the steam, carrying with it the scent of pine bark and damp soil. Outside, the hills roll gently into mist. The forest does not hurry, nor should we. In time, the bathing ritual changes, not quickly, not all at once, but as the Silla kingdom gives way to Goryeo and later Hosein. The bathhouse, once a village secret, grows into something broader. The fire pit, the herbal steam, the slow rituals of sweat and stillness, they do not disappear. But they begin to take on new meanings, new names, and new places. Let's step forward, gently, into the 15th century, under the reign of King Se of the Joseon dynasty. Here, behind the palace walls of Gyeongbokdong, steam rises once again, but now from more carefully carved bath chambers. The walls are stone, not clay. The herbal basins rest in bronze. The wooden ladles are inlaid with mother-of-pearl, but the air holds a similar warmth. You notice that this bath is not only for cleansing, it is medical. The term now is hanjungmak, meaning literally Korean sauna. The royal physicians prescribed regular sweat sessions to improve circulation, restore digestion, calm fever, and strengthen the body after injury or birth. The kings used it, so did scholars, court ladies, and generals. Yet the essence of the forest remained. The royal hanjungmak was still heated with wood, still infused with mugwort, ginger, mulberry leaves, and occasionally dried persimmon bark. The heat was intense, not steamy like today's saunas, but dry and enveloping, almost like being embraced by a slow, breathing kill. A place where the body, once settled, could feel itself restored cell by cell. Attendants prepared special clothing, hemp robes, soaked in barley water and sun-dried in the courtyard. The robes absorbed the sweat and carried away fatigue. After the bath, bathers were offered herbal tizomia or 5-flavor berry, ginseng root brewed low and long, or juju broth sweetened slightly with rice malt outside the palace. In smaller villages, the same traditions continued. The bathhouse stood at the edge of town, near the stream or the forest line. Families gathered not just to bathe, but to rest, to recover from illness, or simply to find warmth in winter. A grandmother might bring her granddaughter and pass down old blends of herbal rubs. A father might soak in silence after the rice harvest, letting his spine melt into the clay wall, and always, always, there was silence. Not solemn, not rigid, just, gentle, words spoken in low tones, movement unhurried. The heat invited stillness, and the stillness shaped memory. It's said that even Confucian scholars, famously devoted to discipline, sought out hanjungmak sessions before important debates or exams, not as indulgence, but as alignment, a way to soften the muscles and sharpen the spirit. The sweat, they said, helped the mind shed distractions. You can almost feel that now. Your breath deepens. Your thoughts slow. You are neither hot nor cold, simply enveloped, like a tea leaf in warm water. Every part of you has softened just a little, and still there is no urgency, even now. The bathhouse is not a place you go to finish something. It is a space between moments, a pause in the day's rhythm, a place to let things fall away. The sweat gathers at your temples. You do not wipe it, you let it fall, and as it does, you wonder, what else might fall away if we simply let it? Then stay just a little longer in this warm hush, where time dissolves like mist on the shoulders. One last breath of pine, one last pool of heat beneath your ribs. We are not rushing forward, we're only sinking deeper, into the quiet heat. Of modern Jimjilbangthi fire pit is long gone, and yet the warmth remains. You are now in the heart of modern Korea, not centuries past, but only a few quiet decades ago. The sky is darker here. The street glows faintly with the flicker of neon and the gentle hum of vending machines. But tucked into a side alley or humming beneath a department store lies something. Familiar, the JJIM, Jill Bang. It means heated room, but it holds so much more. Here, the bathhouse has grown, not just in size, but in spirit. It is still a place. For heat, for sweat, for silence. But now, you may find bookshelves, napping rooms, salt caves, birchwood domes. A television playing slowly in the corner, volume low, almost whispering. Some jinglebangs are open all night. Some are open always. You. Pay your small entry fee and receive a uniform soft cotton t-shirt and shorts, usually in pale pastel. You place your shoes in a locker, your phone too, and then the soft shuffle of slippers down a tiled hallway. The scent is a little different now. Cedar planks, roasted eggs, baked clay, lavender mist from a nearby DIFF USER. The silence here is looser. Some guests talk quietly. A child laughs. A couple shares gimbap in the corner, but there is still a kind of stillness, more communal than solemn. Everyone is resting in their own way. Some are deep in sleep, tucked under cotton blankets in the nap room. Others are curled beside a warm salt wall, reading comics under a dim lamp. You pass into the heated Domda Hanjungmak room, the spiritual descendant of that old clay hut. On the forest edge, its walls are lined with stone and wood, the ceiling like a rounded oven. Inside, it is hot but dry. You lie down slowly on the woven mat. Around you, others are already still, some with towels folded over their faces, some with their palms on their chest, breathing slowly, as if returning to a place they've always known. This is not merely a bath, it is a kind of memory. In these rooms, the rhythms of the old forest huts are preserved, softened by modern life, but still intact. Families visit after long days. Travelers stay overnight. The elderly return each week, knowing which room warms the joints just right. Some jinglebangs still offer mugwort steam, or the yellow soil room, or the jade sauna, each said to restore a different part of the self. The ritual is now elastic. A teenager may text her friends under a heated dome. A grandmother might sip barley tea alone. A middle-aged man might rest his head against the clay wall, remembering the steam huts of his village youth. And maybe you are here too, lying still, letting your thoughts melt like butter on a stone. The heat is a blanket. The silence is not empty, it is shared. You are no longer alone, and never quite together. Above you, a small wooden sign says, "In warmth, there is peace. In sweat, there is stillness." And isn't that the truth? For all its changes from forest hut to palace chamber to neon lit. Sauna, the Korean bath, has always been less about washing and more about returning to the body, returning to quiet, returning to a kind of ancient warmth that asks nothing of you but to be still and feel. You sip warm rice tea, you close your eyes, and somewhere in the back of your breath, the smoke from the old clay chimney curls again, rising into the tall pine trees of memory.